In this video, we are going to be walking through some study tips for the NBCOT board exam. I wanted to make this video because many of you have been saying, hey, I am in the process of studying for the board exam. So I just want to share from my own experience some of the tips that I think I learned in my process as I was studying for the NBCOT board exam, and hopefully these will help you out. The first tip is to make sure that you know the format of the exam and the context of the exam. What I mean by format is know how many multiple choice questions there are, how many clinical simulation test questions there are, or whatever else they may throw in there. You know, I don't know 2 years from now if they're going to change the format of the test. So just kind of be up to date regarding what's the format of the test itself so that you know what kind of questions you're going to want to prepare to answer. Secondly is know the context of the exam, and that means know the amount of time you have to take the exam. What can you bring to the exam place? So can you make notes on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard? Things like that, so that you can know how to organize yourself in the moment. Tip 2 is to create a good study schedule. This means carving out some reliable time to study. And so for you, it might look different than for me. From my own experience, I'm a morning person, so I really enjoyed studying in the morning. I enjoyed having my cup of coffee while I'm studying. So, you know, I had some hours blocked off in the morning. With that study schedule, I think it's really helpful to make sure you communicate to family members so that they don't have expectations of you. Make sure that you communicate to your workplace if you need to change your schedule so that you can bring the best of you to those study sessions. And also, very importantly, make sure that you make those study times protected times from any distractions. So for me, I know my phone and my computer can be big distractions because I can get sidetracked. So whatever that looks like for you, go ahead, do it. Be ruthless about that time. You need to protect that study time. Tip number 3 is maybe a little bit controversial, and you may disagree. Feel free to comment down below if you have a different experience. But my tip number 3 is find your main tool and really stick to it and work through it. And what I mean by that is I think a lot of times we're kind of encouraged to use multiple resources. And while I think that can be helpful at times, I think when you're studying this volume of information, you're studying 2.5 or 3 years, however long your program is, of schooling into maybe 6 weeks or however long you are planning on preparing for the NBCOT board exam. That is a lot of content to go through. And I think just having a main tool like a therapy ed book or maybe the AOTA PDFs, I mean, I'm sure there's other great ones out there as well. To me, it probably doesn't matter that much. The more important thing is to pick it and do the work of working your way through it, studying the material, synthesizing the material, trying to memorize the material. The reason I think that's really important is because you want to get a good review of all the information and then take a practice test. That practice test is then going to give you the information of, I think, the weak areas. At least it did for me. For example, if I took the practice test and I saw that I didn't understand my spinal cord questions or my neurological injury questions, from there I can either go back to my main resource, but if I know that I reviewed that already and it didn't give me the information I needed, then maybe that's the time when I would pick up a secondary resource that maybe is more specific to that diagnosis and will help me to understand those questions a little bit better. I hope that makes sense, but I think in the long run, you know, it saved me time because I wasn't jumping between a lot of different resources. I was also not trying to cram too much into my head because I think you can only memorize so much in such a short span of time. And so in that way, it kept me organized and didn't keep me from getting distracted. And I think it was a more efficient way of studying than using multiple resources and trying to synthesize all my stroke information, all my cardiac injury information, all my theory information from different resources. I just used one and worked my way through that. That brings us to tip number 4, which is to focus on our weaknesses. And this obviously goes in line with tip number 3 that we just talked about. But here I just want to re-emphasize the importance of practice tests to help, first of all, reveal our weaknesses, and then secondly, allow us to take action towards improving those weaknesses. So out of all the resources that I think you could invest in the study process for the OT board exam, I think practice tests is probably the most valuable thing, at least that's what I would spend my money on if I had to do it again. So a couple good resources again would be like the therapy ed book, and probably most importantly is the NBCOT practice test, because those are going to have the language and the setup that's going to be the most similar to the actual real deal. And tip number 5 is to use active study techniques. And what I mean by this is to not just passively read the information in your therapy ed book or AOTA PDFs, but to actively engage with it. So write it down, summarize it, whatever you need to do. For me, I'm a visual and kinesthetic learner, so I enjoyed writing it down on a piece of paper so that I could visually, kind of in my mind's eye, remember where did I write that information? How did I write that down? Another thing that I didn't use for my studying for the NBCOT board exam, but I did use for a lot of my other exams, was to study with a study partner. That was invaluable to me because that really gave me a lot of opportunity to actively engage with the information. Because once you share information or teach somebody else or have them teach you, it's a more active process with that information, and I think it just sticks a little bit better. And that brings us to tip number 6, which is to make sure that you take good care of yourself. I would highly encourage that you make sure you eat well, you sleep well, you are exercising, you're engaging in all the other meaningful occupations in your own life. That way, when it comes to your study times, you can bring the best of who you are to those times, and you can bring the best of who you are to the exam yourself, so that ultimately you can bring the best of yourself to the clients and patients that you're going to help get back to their meaningful occupations here in the future. So I wish you the best on this journey. If you haven't already subscribed to this channel, but you like this kind of content, please do, so that you're kept up to date regarding new videos coming out on this channel. That being said, have a wonderful occupation-filled day, and I'll see you in the next video.